I'm out here in the farm fields of Illinois. This is a bean field that just turned brown in mid-September. And there's a lot of concern over where the product that these farmers in Illinois have raised is going to be going and what kind of price they'll get for the crops they've raised. I grew up in this area. I went to Little Cayman High School. It's about 2 miles north of here. And I went to school with all the farm kids, and I even grew up in eastern Pennsylvania and went to school with Amish and Mennonite kids in Lancaster County. And growing up, I had an uncle who ran a farm in upstate New York. So I have some history with an empathy for farmers, because I watch how hard they work to get this crop in the ground, and its timing and the rains in spring, whether they come or not. One year it was too wet, the next year it's too dry. It's tough being a farmer. But what's even tougher is growing all this crops and having all the equipment and debt you need to be a farmer, and then be cast aside by things like tariffs. And that's what's so confusing to me. The people out here in farm country, a lot of them have Trump signs in their lawns. There's a huge one up the road here. When I'm cycling over the summer, I see them all over the place. Probably see 10 to 20 in a 40-mile ride. And that indicates to us that farmers are big into Republican values. And that's the other side of the coin here. You know, what is the ideology driving people to want to be Republican? Well, over the centuries, that we've had farming here in the United States, there's been a lot of deception by conservatives. The Dust Bowl came about because people were told to go on out, God will help you, and rain will follow the plow. And that was a lie. And what we wound up with is agricultural conditions that basically turned the entire Great Plains to dust. And there's sort of a similar thing going on in Illinois in many states, because soils are not in a great condition here either. And there's this sort of been this profit-oriented idea that it's your job to go and grind up the soil and get what you can out of it, get the best price for it, and we'll take care of the rest. It's that classic sort of go ideology that people pride themselves on in America. But sustainability is a real problem. That's true in terms of economic markets, where a lot of crops from the United States are sold to other countries, for example, China. And now we've imposed tariffs on China, and guess who winds up paying the price? It's Illinois and Iowa and Wisconsin and Missouri and Nebraska and all these farmers that, work their lives trying to sustain their crop output every year. And Trump doesn't care about those people, but what he does do, and this is sort of his method, he has never had a good grasp of forecasting policy. He bankrupted casinos, for instance, right? And many of his businesses failed, and those that did sort of succeed were dependent on creative bookkeeping. The guy is not a good planner. He could never be a good farmer. He sucks at everything he does. But somehow he came up with this let's do something about our markets idea with tariffs, and they've never been proven to work. And right now, something like 86 to 90% of the tariffs are being absorbed not by foreign companies, but by Americans paying higher product prices. And the farmers are the ones that get kicked right in the nuts. And what does Trump do? He uses taxpayer money to pay them off for the fuck-ups that he did. And that's the sick aspect of it. And all these guys with Trump signs out here, they're happy to ask for handouts now, when many of them apparently don't like, the idea that immigration people come here and, they're using our tax dollars. Blame immigrants for everything. Well, guess what? A lot of our farm production, especially things like fruits and vegetables and everything, are reliant on immigrant workers. And so Trump is so fucking dumb about what really happens here on the earth that he's screwing everybody over. And these farmers out here, you sort of have to have empathy for them because they've been lied to. They've been deceived. And we need small farmers as well as big farmers. But during Trump's first term, when he first messed up with farm markets, Sonny Perdue, his Secretary of Agriculture, said to American farmers, tough luck, go big or go away. And so corporatized farming and the seed crops owned by giant firms like Bayer and Monsanto and all of that are taking over. And if we don't have any local control over how food's produced, we're at the mercy of all of that, the corporatization of America and the oligarchy. And if you don't connect these dots and see that people out here are being deceived, and these are the same people basically voting for Trump, then you don't get it. Where will these crops go? We really don't know. They may rot in the bins, in the dryers, everything.
Right now, we're in a very dire situation. September's upon us, harvest is starting in the deep south, and we have 0 bushels of soybeans on the books to be sold to China for this current crop that's about to come out of the field. Historically, over the last 5 years, about a third of soybean sales to China would be booked. China amounts to 25% of our total U.S. soybean crop. So that would be 8 or 9% of the whole U.S. crop would normally be on the books with China right now, and we have 0. That is alarming. The farm economy as a whole is struggling. Inflation has caused our cost of production to rise drastically on every front. Commodity prices, in particular soybeans, are down about 50% from where they were 3 years ago. And our numbers are deeply in the red. And we send this letter to President Trump because we've been talking for months about needing to have sales in place, a deal in place, a phase 2 type agreement that has purchase commitments along with a level playing field on trade with no tariffs. And we haven't had anything happen, unfortunately. And our appeal to President Trump and his administration is make soybeans a priority in any trade negotiations that are taking place. Soybeans are the #1 agriculture export to China. And in the last trade war, it was 71% of the losses that we had as American farmers. And they're critical.
So, having listened to perspectives of 2 different farmers, one who is regretting and one who is explaining why the others are regretting, preferably we would say these are conservative farmers who have small, medium-sized or even big farms and are now regretting because the administration is not favoring them. And there is a number of issues. If you've been following throughout the year, you've seen the way tariffs have really affected the farmers, the issue of immigration, and how now many farmers are running to file for bankruptcy, which is not ideal for America as a whole, and also for these farmers who depend on farming as a source of livelihood. And today we're actually going to discuss this issue again and revise our standpoints and also listen to more speakers speaking on this issue and how their opinions would vary from those that we've listened before or support those that we've listened. It's an interesting topic as well, and I know this is not the last time we're talking about farming. As you guys have followed previously, you know these farmers farm important crops like soybeans, which they are facing competitions from countries like Brazil, where China and also Mexico are really relying on trade just because of Trump policies or this administration's policies. The same very farmers that did vote for Trump and now calling upon him to save them, and you've seen the way they're depending now on loans or subsidies or just charities in order to make them continue running the farm. Others are resorting to selling their farm equipments because now they have to sustain themselves. Others don't have a market to sell their produce, or if they sell their produce to the market, they're being lowballed by big corporations who are tampering with prices, setting the prices. Like, you guys know economics, of course, the issues of monopolies, monopolistic, oligopoly, and things like that. Just people who control the market, few buyers who affect the issue of supply and demand. But mostly, when a big market like China deflects or goes to another country to seek for these commodities that are grown by United States farmers in a big proportion, then it becomes a problem in the long run. We're gonna end up having farmers with low income or insufficient income to sustain themselves. Also, grocery prices in America might, in a way, run up because now they have to sell their commodities in some areas for high prices to compensate, or rather others may just face a diminishing supply because farmers don't want to produce crops anymore. But I don't want to say that that is my conclusive remarks or my detailed summary of this issue. We're just gonna listen to a few more speakers, listen to their talk points, how they debate, and then we're gonna come back and dissect this matter further.
So now the U.S. president backed off a little bit and told Brazil, we're going to continue to tariff you, pero no mucho. So he reduced a bunch of the tariffs from 50% to 10%. He waived a bunch because coffee was going to get way too expensive. Americans cannot go without coffee. And President Lula did a thing that he doesn't do lightly. He only did a few times in his life. He wrote an op-ed for the New York Times because he really wants the U.S. president to read it. He wrote it in English. You can read it if you want. And he's kindly saying, dude, don't. Why? Who wins? No one wins. Everybody loses. I mean, you lose. We don't really lose. But, for the sake of brotherhood, stop it. Of course, that's not exactly what it said. I'm just kind of paraphrasing it. It was like 3,000 words long. But it's almost like, who's advising the president? Are there economic advisors at the White House?
Well, surprise, surprise. Big tough Donald Trump is already backing down from his tariffs. He just announced that he's going to put the Mexican tariffs on hold for a month because apparently the president of Mexico has agreed to put 10,000 troops on the border to prevent the flow of drugs across the border. I'm sure it was something like this. Yeah, Mr. President, we'll put 10,000 troops on the border. Whatever you say. Here's what really happened. Donald Trump is saving face by announcing this bullshit deal to put 10,000 troops on the border because he was getting his ass kicked in the press and everyone was piling on against this. The polls are terrible on this. The market tanked this morning, and it's all because of Donald Trump's ridiculous tariffs.
Well, it looks like Trump has finally pissed the farmers off. Let's get into it. The report is in. The U.S. farmers went from a $12 billion trade agreement with China to zero. His mass deportations have left the farmers with no workers or hardly any. Then on top of that, his increase in tariffs made them lose one of their biggest buyers, which was China. Now China is going to Brazil and Africa. This is your wonderful president. A lot of farmers have had to file bankruptcy. A lot of farmers are losing their farms. Yet and still, we have the wonderful president sitting up in the Oval Office, signing. Take a listen to this farmer who did an interview explaining the struggle that they're having.
Disappearing profits are making it nearly impossible for them to break even, let alone to turn a profit. One of those farmers calls the president's tariffs, quote, the ice cream on top of a cake of a perfect storm. He joins us now, Arkansas farmer Scott Brown, who attended last week's town hall. Scott, really good to have you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Tell me about what's happening with your farm.
Well, we've got a real disaster with this tariff deal. I mean, we produce 40% more agricultural products in this country than we can consume domestically. 1 in every 4 rows of soybeans in every field in the entire United States of America has to go abroad. China is the largest importer of soybeans in the world. They import 61% of the world's market. Last year, we sent around $12 billion I think $14 billion worth of soybeans the year before. For the first time in 20 years, China's bought zero soybeans and zero new crop corn out of this country.
Zero?
So we went from 12 billion to zero.
Where are they buying the soybeans?
Brazil. You see, we lost 42% of our market share in the first tariff war. In Trump's first tariff war, the Chinese went to buying their soybeans from Brazil. They invested billions of dollars in Brazilian infrastructure. They have moved into Africa, and they're going to commercially farm in Africa. Since we left with USAID, they moved their Belt and Road program into Africa. So we've pretty much lost the Chinese market share. If we got 100% of the soybean business, Katie, for every country in the world except for Brazil and Argentina, we would still only have half the soybean business that China is.
Are you getting 100% of everything else?
Yeah, if we got 100% of everything else, we would still only have half the Chinese business.
Well, what are you getting right now if you're not getting China? Are you getting every other market out there?
Or probably some other countries, and the market's pretty stifled. Most of our soybeans here go to the Mississippi River. It's the closest place to market them. They're going to go downriver and go overseas somewhere at some point. Beans are about $10.28 on the board today. We're going to get 40 cents behind that as a basis because the elevators are going to want to control their hedge. It's going to cost us 50 or 60 cents in a truck to get there, so we're getting in the low nines. In Purdue University will tell you it takes $12.03 to raise them.
Okay, so you farm soybeans. You farm 800 acres. You know, $0 coming from China. That's a problem. How are you going to pay your bills? Are you turning a profit? Are you breaking even?
I hope to break even this year. I farm so little, I farm by myself. My tractors are all paid for. They're old. They're 50 years old. My tractors were all made in the 70s. My combine was made in 1997. I cut a load of beans, put it in the truck, and haul it to the river myself. So I've got a lot less cost than most of these boys. I've got friends that farm 5 and 6 and 7,000 acres that have million.
This is why one great man said, it's not about black or white. It's the context of the person's character. And this is the character that you guys voted for. Donald Trump and his administration is causing the farmers to fail.
While this farmer expects to break even, other farmers or his cohort may not be lucky to experience what he is experiencing right now. And it happens to a lot of mid-sized or small farmers who are having expectations. You know, this year they have put in the work, planted, weed, sowed. Maybe right now they're planning to harvest these crops and wondering where can we sell these crops to, or how can we store this without getting bad, because now our primary markets and secondary markets are pretty much done with us. There is no relationship whatsoever, and it's at this point that we need to look at how rural farmers in the United States of America are having big trouble. This stems from them primarily voting in for this administration, which had promised them that farmers would be at the very top of the chain that changes would really target. If you've listened to those campaign promises from Donald Trump and his entourage, you'd see the way he promised farmers better lives because he's gonna straighten out economic ties with different countries. And what is happening right now is that these promises are not being fulfilled, and farmers are becoming even more susceptible to bankruptcy or filing bankruptcy in general. This is usually common in rural America where, you know, farming takes place. You didn't expect like large-scale farming in the cities or in big states. It's mostly those states that are very much known for farming, those who have ranches, soybeans, wheat, pork, dairy. Some of these commodities are perishable, others can stay long-term, maybe period of months before being sold. But mostly these commodities that can go bad within a short period is that which is making farmers having that pain in the. But apart from that, so farmers are also facing this issue of higher cost of inputs, where seedlings are becoming so much expensive, fertilizer, farm equipment, things like this, because now it seems like the market has known that there's going to be low demand in the next coming year because most farmers are going to surrender farming because they don't think it's becoming profitable over the years. It's not only this year, this trend has been on the rise where, of course, farmers are becoming more inclined to less farming because they're using more but gaining less. You can see even from the last farmer who say that is really hoping this year to break even, which is mostly unlikely. And this also could be stemming from, high cost of inputs. When the inputs become high, we've also got that reduced export access. Yeah, like I'm gonna talk about the Mexican market, which is the second largest market that United States really does depend on taking its produce there. We're gonna talk about that in a moment. But that is just what has been happening to the rural farmers in the United States of America. Could be states like Illinois, Texas, we've got Nebraska. Yeah, we've talked about these states over and over. By now, you guys might even know what's happening in these states, even the names of farmers, because we've talked and we've made a lot of videos about this. You'd ask yourself, so what is happening with these tariffs? Previously, we talked about how Donald Trump extended these tariffs for countries like Mexico and China, which are among the biggest markets for American farms products. And for China, of course, previously we learned about the 20% tariffs and reduced to like 10 to 15% and maybe like 3 months extension. And some people are pointing out, as you've had some speakers pointing out, the issue of extension, which means that Trump is becoming so weaker and is not exercising or fulfilling the 10 to 15% tariffs on China. It's like it's showing its weakness to China, who is a big competitor. And despite the reduction of 10% or let's say 5% to China, these Chinese people already feel like the diplomatic ties with the United States of America is already ruined, and now they are looking at secondary markets like Brazil, Africa. Obviously the world has many more continents, it's not only America. China feels like it's time for them to move on, and it's not that they would want to depend on America a lot, even though most of their valuable income from exports come from American market. But now they have to look for alternatives in order to somehow pressure the United States of America to reduce the tariffs or eradicate them completely. For Mexico, I think it was 30% or 35%, then reduced somehow. And also, was it a 60-day extension? And then right now, also them have imposed retaliatory tariffs of 25% on dairy products, pork, and poultry. You guys are highly dependent on chicken, eating chicken, ducks, turkeys. These things come from Mexico and they are retaliating somehow, even though they have promised to deploy like 10,000 soldiers or army to the US-Mexican border in order to prevent the immigration thing. And as you've heard, immigration is a big thing for Donald Trump. Every day he's signing executive orders, obviously concerning immigration issue in America, which somehow is succeeded. I don't know if this deploying of 10,000 soldiers on the United States border is kind of like a leverage or is gonna restore economic ties with Mexico in the long run, but it's something that we are waiting in the coming days and see if it's gonna change. Basically, that is what rural farmers are facing, and it's not the issue of just pork and soybeans and poultry. It's a big reflection on what rural America is going through. One would ask themselves, are they being abandoned, or are these farmers just regretting, or are they just disillusioned politically? You've seen liberals feel like Trump is hurting farmers, and these farmers are also disillusioned to a point where they're not seeing, it's like a cult, they're not seeing that they're being hurt by the very person they voted for. Moderates also feel like this issue of tariffs need to be sorted out in order to, in the long run, help America in its sustainability aspect, especially in food control. Can America sustain itself going forward without depending on exports on foods that they were growing before? For the conservative, they still feel like they would still trust in the government and its agenda on tariffs, and they feel like God is with them at the end of it all. So it's up to the farmers to realize that maybe this belief that they have might be hurting them in the long run, and they need to step back a little bit, reflect, or point out and tell the administration to at least loosen some strict measures or stand with the strict measures and not succumb to the retaliatory tariffs that they are being imposed to the United States of America, and also find markets for them. But that's my viewpoint, and it's at this point that I invite you guys, or it's a forum for you guys to now share your thoughts or opinions of what things that I've omitted or might have not said, or if you have differing opinions, not agreeing with me, that's very much okay. Your opinions are invited in the comment section down there below, only that you have to do it respectfully. Also, don't forget, speakers that have been featured in this video today, their usernames have been embedded in the stitch videos. As always, go on to their TikToks, follow, like. For this channel, make sure you smash a huge thumbs up button, consider subscribing, turn on post notifications so that you may not miss my next upload. And with that, guys, let me meet you in the next one. Peace out.